The building of the hospital began in 1816, some 6 months after the Battle of Waterloo, and it opened in 1818. The outer bricks were a creamy white colour and were Walling fen bricks. The stone cornices, sills and string courses were of Elland and other local stone, and Westmoreland blue slate were used for the roofs. The total cost of the hospital, shown in the records, as £36,448, 4 shillings and 9 farthing. The statue of the lady, after research, is now known to be called Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers, and is now situated in the museum at Fieldhead Hospital, Wakefield. The clock tower, as seen from the old magistrate's courtyard. The medical superintendent's accommodation and courtyard, leading to the air shaft intake, to supply the heating system which will be mentioned later. Having entered Cleaton Ward, we now ascend the staircase to Right Ward. Leaving Right Ward, we come to the staircase leading up to the rooftops. As we go through the door that leads onto the roof, you will see some of the other wards called Cleaton, Crichton Brown and Ellis. Behind the trees, the red brick building is Milton Maudsley Ward. On the other side of the hospital, you will see the wards of Holmfield and Aberfield and the statue of Flora standing in the old magistrate's courtyard. Why Stanley Royd? Many people may believe the hospital was named after a person, but not so. Stanley-cum-Renthorpe was the area in which the hospital was built, and Royd is an old Yorkshire word for open area or fields, thus Stanley Royd. Below the rooftops that I am walking on are the wards of the male side of the hospital. They are all named after hospital directors and medical superintendents, who were Cleaton, Crowther, Corsellis, Crichton Brown, Ellis, Ferrier, Bevan Lewis, Shaw Bolton, Wright and Tuke. But before that, they were all numbered. We shall continue our walk on the rooftops to the cupola, and Stewart, one of the hospital joiners, will explain how the weather vane controlled the heating system of the hospital.
The weather vane on the top of the cupola works the iron rod which goes through the middle and down through the bowels of the building to work various shutters that work off the weather vane to eliminate the exhaust and bring in fresh air from the outside.
This is part of the old venting system from the weather vane, which got rid of the stale air and brought in new.
Hospital Administration Department and Clock Tower. Having entered the door to the administration department, we now see the patient's bank. We now climb the stairs to the clock tower. The workings of the clock were made and installed by pots of lead.
Tunnel with gates is the original corpse way, where the hospital is built over, where they used to bring corpses down to the Springs graveyard in the old days. This is the continuation of the corpse way which runs through to Wakefield graveyard down the Springs.
Round the corner to the left is the gardener's department and veg house, where patients used to prepare vegetables for the hospital kitchens. The works compound known as the Banbury, fitter's shop and the back gates to the joiner's shop. The red door was the hospital bread store. This is Roy White's works store, which used to be the hospital brewery. and the works office. This area was known as the Works Square, leading round to the Works office and upstairs the planner estimators department. The building next door to this one is the fire officers department and the electrician's shop. The joiner's shop, and next door is the paint shop. In the corner the upholsterers, and upstairs the cobbler's shop and the old tinsmiths, and to the right hand side the plumber's shop. The hospital library was run by Mrs. Johnson, the librarian, and was used by both patients and staff alike. Taking a walk through the basement bedrooms under Alderson Ward is a very eerie experience. A creaking door, the echo of your footsteps make you feel nervous. You remember the days of the turning of the keys in the door, the creaking of the door, and the door slams shut behind me. The footsteps echo and I hear the sound of a dripping tap, and I think, is there still anyone in here? Alas, no, it is only my imagination until the light goes out. In the early days, the heating of the hospital was done by forced air drawn in from the air shaft, as seen earlier, and heated by a hot air stove called a cockle. The modern heating system, the hospital, came from the boiler house, which supplied steam for the heating and hot water for all the wards, and also contained the electricity supply. An engineer, Mr. Paul Dickens, inspected the ducts under the hospital. The warm air from the cockle was drawn through the subways with the aid of the weather vane, and dispersed up these 3 shafts to the wards above. The original wall tiles in the old bathrooms on Alderson Ward. Note the spy holes top and bottom on these double doors for double locking. On this maroon column it can be seen where in the past 4 gas lights were fitted. Concerts and pantomimes were held here. Patients were invited to come and see the performances at the beginning of the week, and tickets were sold to the public for weekend shows, and some of the money was used to fund the next year's performance. Stanley Royd Follies gave 3 shows in 1989, and the Hospital Variety Show of 1989 raised money for children in need and provided patient entertainment. Of particular interest is a performance in 1875 of the classical drama Pygmalion and Galatea by W.S. Gilbert, some 4 years after he joined Sullivan. Not only did Gilbert himself suggest that the play should be performed in the hall, but he also volunteered to take part, and no doubt sat at the old stone make-up table in the basement under the stage. Stanley Royd, Kitchen Square and Butcher's Shop, and round the corner we have Female Central, and all the wards were named after trees: almond, beech, cedar, daphne, elm, fern, gorse, hazel, ivy and juniper, and not forgetting the hospital shop. This is Lee House and the old mortuary, which for a short time was used as the hospital library. Stanley Royd Museum was opened in 1975. The curator was the late Mr. Lawrence Ashworth, who was helped by Mr. Jack Martwell, a former engineer at the hospital. The museum is now situated at Fieldhead Hospital, Wakefield, and is run by the new curator, Mr. Mick McCarthy, and is open every Wednesday 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. The mirror frame was carved by one of the patients in the 1870s. The clock, which was designed to keep all the clocks in the wards at the correct time. The plans of the hospital as in 1888 and the model made by Mr. Ashworth. The Hospital Church of St Faith was built in 1861 and little changed apart from the disappearance of the bell tower. The pews for the congregation were nearly all full at the services, but there were 3 rows at the rear of the church for members of the public. The silver plate inscribed Pauper Lunatic Asylum 1843 and is now in the museum at Fieldhead Hospital, Wakefield, under the care of Mick McCarthy, the curator. The eagle lectern was carved by a patient in 1870, and when finished, he allegedly tried to destroy it, hence the piece of wood placed in the slot on its neck. The organ was installed in 1863. The window depicts figures of the modern hospital team, along with the 2 saints, Phelan and Luke.